Alright, so here we are inside of Flash. During this section, we're going to be going over a little bit of ActionScript, and specifically, we're going to be covering how to create a draggable window, a content area that your users are able to move around within your movie space. So here inside this example file called window_drag that I've created, I've got a panel. This is a movie clip, an instance of a movie clip called MC_panel. And if I open up my library, you can see that this guy is right here. And I'm just going to open that up and give us just a quick rundown as to what I have in there before we begin to add the ActionScript. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on the asset in the library. So in here, I've got 4 layers. I've got the panel layer, which is basically just the base part of the panel. I've got the body here, and I've got this bar up at the top. And I've got button assets, the drag here, the minimize button, and the maximize button. I've got the literal buttons. So these guys here, 3 of them, they're just buttons with only a hit state. They're not visible to the viewer of your Flash movie, but they're just activation areas, places that we can add some ActionScript. And those buttons are called drag_BNT, BTN, min_BTN, and max_BTN. And the last thing I have in here is an action layer, 2 little keyframes, really simple, doesn't have much on it, just a couple of stop actions. What I'm doing here is just as this movie clip goes through these 2 frames, all it's doing is simulating the effect of minimizing that larger part of the panel. So just when the user hits the minimize button, we'll just jump to frame 2, get rid of that area. When they hit the maximize button, we'll tell it to go back to frame 1. Pretty simple. So really that's all I've got here inside of this panel. So now it's up to the ActionScript to do the work. So I'm going to hop back out to scene 1. And let's see. I've got 2 layers in here. I've got a panel layer, which is again just my movie clip. And this movie clip happens to be the instance name of panel_MC. In my actions layer, currently nothing in there. This is where all of our work's going to go. Alright, so I'm going to end up creating, let's see, I'm going to end up creating 4 little functions here in order to get this to work. The first thing that we're going to cover is how to get the window to be draggable by the user. And we're going to utilize an event of the button called onPress in order to get them to drag this thing around. So my button is called drag_BTN, and I'm going to use the event called onPress. And that's going to be equal to a function, and I'm forgetting something here. I'll put it back in there. In order to get to that button, drag_BTN, it's actually a part of my panel, that instance that I pulled out of my library. So I've actually got to tell it to go to panel_MC dot go to drag_BTN dot onPress equals our function. Now we talked about methods in just an earlier lesson. Here we're going to be using a method called startDrag. One little method in order to get this thing to move around. Really, it's the event that's doing the brunt of the work. It's triggering this function, and all this function is going to do is tell this window to start to be draggable. So I'm going to use this method called startDrag. If I open up the parentheses, it's got a couple of arguments in there, a couple of parameters that it wants me to fill in. The target is actually the only one that I'm going to use at this time, and the target just wants to know, okay, well, what do you want me to drag around? And in this case, I just want the panel_MC to be draggable. The lock center is just where your mouse will go. If I leave that just to, if I leave it blank, it'll keep the mouse cursor where the user clicked. If I turn that to true, then it'll snap it to the center of the target. In this case, it'll snap it to the center of panel_MC. The LTRB is left, top, right, bottom, and I can set up constraints for the draggable area. For now, we're not going to get into those. I'm just going to leave it with just the target. And we're going to test this out. There's going to be some more work that we need to do here in order to truly get this to work. But just so we can see if this function is working for us, I'm going to go ahead and test the movie out. So if you recall, our test method is just control plus the enter key. All right, if I were to get some errors, they'd pop up inside of the output window. So here's my draggable window. Drag here. I'm going to left click with my mouse button, and I'm able to drag that guy around. Still holding down my left button. Now, like I mentioned, there's a little bit more work that we need to do in order to get this to be truly functional. If I let go of the left mouse button right now, it's still dragging around. Okay, so I was able to get the press to trigger that function, but that function is still in control. So I need to go ahead and close that. So we need to add something else here in order to tell it to stop dragging this thing around. So back inside my actions panel, I'm going to drop down a couple lines, and I'm going to almost duplicate what I already have here. Let's see, drag underscore btn, press, yep. Feel free to copy and paste, it's always your friend. I like to do this just this way. I'll continue to remember what I need to do. So basically the same thing there. I'm still referring to the same panel. I'm still referring to the same button. Now here, I'm going to change this part, this press, I'm going to change this to a release. So on release of that button, we're going to run another method here called stop drag. This one has no parameters, no arguments that it needs. Since you're already dragging something around, it's naturally going to say, okay, I'm going to stop dragging that which you are dragging around. So I'll close that, close the parentheses, and I'm going to go ahead and test it out again. Control plus enter. There we go, I can drag it around. And now, if I let go of my left mouse button, it should drop it. Pretty neat. Two little functions. Get this thing to drag around, get it to release it, stop dragging when you release the button. Next thing I want to do is get our two min and max buttons to work. Alright, so two more little functions. Panel underscore MC. I've got a different button that I'm going to be referring to this time. This one's called min underscore btn dot, let's see, on press. Yep. And here, all I want to do is tell my panel, which if you recall had those two keyframes, one to be able to show the bulk of the panel, one to hide it, just got rid of it. Here I want to say go to and stop. And this is the minimum one, so I'm going to go to frame 2. And just to finish this out, copy and paste is your friend. I'm going to paste this in here. I'm going to change this to max and change this to frame 1. Alright, so if all goes well, when they click the minimum button, this guy here, it should jump to frame 2 of the panel underscore MC movie clip, and it should hide this part of the window. When they hit the max button, this guy here, it should jump to frame 1 of panel underscore MC and show the window again for us. So again, we're just kind of simulating the ability for min and max of our panel. And I'm going to test this out. Control plus enter. And let's try it. Well, drag it, minimize it, maximize it. So there we go. A little bit of ActionScript, couple of little methods. What, 3 methods: start drag, a stop drag, and a go to and stop in order to get this draggable movie clip to work. I hope you enjoyed that section, and we'll jump into a little bit more ActionScript here in just a moment.